early 1992. Garden Lodge. Mary Austin had been working through the slow and difficult process of organizing Freddie Mercury's personal papers in the months following his death, a task that required sorting through decades of accumulated correspondence, notes, and personal documents scattered across the various rooms where Freddie had conducted both his creative work and his private life. And it was during this specific process, according to Mary's own account offered across the limited interviews where this particular discovery has come up, that she encountered a piece of paper tucked into a desk drawer that would eventually carry unexpected significance for the enormous tribute performance already being planned for that April. Mary has described the note as brief, handwritten in Freddie's distinctive script, undated but positioned among other papers that suggested, based on their surrounding context, an origin sometime within the final year of his life, addressing a subject that struck Mary immediately as connected to something considerably larger than an ordinary personal reminder. The note, according to Mary's characterization, appeared to represent Freddie's own private thoughts about how any future tribute or memorial performance honoring his work should be conducted. A specific and somewhat unusual document given that Freddie had, according to every available account, never explicitly commissioned or requested any such tribute event during his lifetime, leaving Mary uncertain, when she first discovered it, whether the note represented genuine forward planning on Freddie's part or simply a private reflection he had never intended anyone else to encounter. Mary has said, across the interviews where this discovery has come up, that she brought the note directly to Brian May and Roger Taylor once she understood its potential relevance to the tribute concert they were already in the process of organizing, a massive undertaking that would eventually bring together dozens of major musical artists for a single enormous performance at Wembley Stadium on the 20th of April 1992, an event conceived, according to every account of its planning process, primarily as a fundraising effort for AIDS awareness and research, combined with a public collective opportunity for grief and celebration of Freddie's musical legacy. Brian has confirmed, in the limited interviews addressing this specific detail, receiving the note from Mary during the concert's planning stages, describing his own reaction as a combination of surprise and a specific kind of relief. The recognition that even in the considerable uncertainty of trying to organize an event of this unprecedented scale without Freddie's own direct guidance, they now possessed at least some fragment of his own actual thinking about what such an event should represent. The note's specific content, according to the characterization Mary and Brian have both offered across their separate but generally consistent accounts, addressed less the practical logistics of any tribute performance and more a particular philosophical concern Freddie apparently wanted honored should such an event ever occur, expressed, according to Brian's recollection of the note's language, as a specific worry that a memorial concert might become, in Freddie's own characterization, a funeral with guitars, an event so weighted with grief and reverence that it lost the essential quality of joy and celebration that Freddie apparently understood as central to what his music had always actually been about. The note said something like, "If they ever do something for me, please don't let them make it sad," Brian has recounted, according to the version of this description that has appeared most consistently across the interviews where he has addressed it. It said the whole point was always to make people feel alive, not to remind them that I wasn't anymore, and that whoever organized anything should remember that a room full of quiet, respectful mourning was the opposite of everything the music had ever tried to do. This particular characterization, Freddie's apparent insistence on celebration over solemnity, even in anticipating his own eventual memorial, aligns coherently with the broader and well-documented understanding of his general approach to performance and audience connection across his entire career. A consistent emphasis on joy, spectacle, and collective celebration that numerous separate accounts from collaborators and critics have identified as central to his artistic identity. Brian and Roger have both indicated, across their separate accounts of the tribute concert's planning process, that this note directly influenced several specific decisions about how the eventual event was structured, moving the overall tone. According to their characterization, away from what might have been a more somber and reverential memorial format towards something considerably closer to an actual celebratory rock concert, featuring, in the event's actual execution, high-energy performances from a wide range of artists rather than the kind of hushed, tribute-focused programming that characterizes many memorial concerts organized. In the aftermath of a beloved artist's death, we kept coming back to that note whenever we had to make a decision about tone, Brian has said, according to the version of this account that has circulated most consistently. Every time someone suggested something that felt too heavy, too focused on loss rather than celebration, we'd think about what Freddie had actually written, and it would remind us what he actually wanted, which made some of the harder decisions considerably easier to make, even while we were all still genuinely grieving. This specific influence has been cited by people who have studied the tribute concert's planning and eventual execution as a coherent explanation for certain notable choices in the event's actual programming. The decision to feature numerous artists performing Queen's material in their own distinct styles rather than attempting straightforward tribute covers. The overall high-energy pacing that characterized much of the show, and the general avoidance of the kind of extended eulogy or overtly mournful programming segments that might have characterized a more conventionally structured memorial event. The tribute concert itself, held before an audience of approximately 72,000 people at Wembley Stadium, with a global television audience estimated in the hundreds of millions, has been extensively documented and analyzed across more than 3 decades of subsequent commentary. Generally regarded as a significant success, both in its fundraising achievements for AIDS research and awareness and in its broader cultural impact, credited by numerous public health researchers and AIDS advocacy organizations as having contributed meaningfully to increased public awareness and reduced stigma surrounding the disease during a period when such awareness remained considerably less developed than it would, eventually, become across the following decades. Brian and Roger have both indicated, in various interviews addressing the concert's legacy, that they consider it to have successfully honored the specific spirit Freddie's note had articulated, an event that, despite its origin in profound and genuine collective grief, ultimately functioned as a celebration of Freddie's music and legacy, rather than a purely mournful commemoration of his death. Whether the specific note Mary discovered genuinely represented Freddie's own deliberate forward planning for exactly this kind of eventual tribute, or whether it originated as a more general reflection on his own broader artistic philosophy that happened to prove useful and relevant when the actual planning process began, remains, according to the limited testimony available, somewhat ambiguous even to Mary and Brian themselves, who have both acknowledged, across their various accounts, some uncertainty about Freddie's original specific intention in writing it. The note's physical fate following the concert's planning process has never been comprehensively documented through any available source, Mary having confirmed only that she retained possession of it following its initial discovery and its subsequent influence on the tribute concert's planning, without ever specifying whether it remains in her possession decades later, whether it has been transferred to any archive or collection, or whether its physical preservation has continued with the same careful discretion that has characterized Mary's handling of several other pieces of Freddie's private correspondence and personal effects across the more than 3 decades since his death. Researchers who have attempted to gain more direct access to the note's exact original wording, hoping to move beyond the general paraphrase characterizations Brian and Mary have offered across their limited public accounts, have generally been unsuccessful, both Mary and Brian maintaining, across every interview where the subject has arisen, a consistent preference for describing the note's general content and significance rather than providing anything resembling a precise verbatim transcription. A pattern of protective paraphrase that mirrors similar discretion documented across several other fragments of private testimony from Freddie's final months and immediate posthumous period. What makes this particular story significant within the broader context of Freddie Mercury's posthumous legacy is the specific and somewhat unusual circumstance of a private, seemingly unintentional piece of writing coming to directly influence one of the largest and most culturally significant public events connected to his memory. A note that Freddie may never have intended anyone to discover, let alone act upon, nonetheless shaping, according to the consistent testimony of the two people most directly responsible for organizing the tribute concert, several specific and meaningful decisions about how tens of thousands of people gathered at Wembley Stadium and hundreds of millions watching around the world would ultimately experience their collective opportunity to grieve and celebrate his memory. This particular dynamic, private intention discovered posthumously and subsequently shaping public commemoration in ways the original author could never have anticipated or approved in real time, offers a specific and meaningful illustration of the broader complexity involved in managing any beloved public figure's posthumous legacy. The recognition that decisions about how to honor someone's memory inevitably require some combination of documented explicit wishes, where they exist, and considerably more uncertain interpretation and extrapolation from whatever fragments of evidence, however incomplete or ambiguous, happen to survive them. Brian May and Roger Taylor have continued. Across more than 3 decades since the tribute concert's original 1992 performance, to reference this general philosophy, celebration over solemnity, joy over pure mourning, in how they have approached subsequent performances and public commemorations connected to Freddie's memory, including the extensive Queen plus Adam Lambert touring era that has, across the years since 2011, continued performing the band's catalog for new generations of audiences with an energy and celebratory intensity that both surviving original members have connected, in various interviews, directly back to their understanding of what Freddie himself would have wanted, an understanding that traces, at least in part, back to a single handwritten note that Mary Austin happened to discover in a desk drawer during the difficult early months of sorting through a life's accumulated papers, a private and possibly never intended for discovery piece of writing that nonetheless became, according to the two men most responsible for interpreting and honoring Freddie's legacy across the following decades, one of the most quietly influential pieces of guidance they ever received about exactly how to continue carrying his music and his memory forward into a future he had known, even while writing whatever brief and private thoughts eventually found their way into that specific desk drawer. He would not personally be present to witness.